just being nice fucks me over all the fucking time. He's not even being nice, he's just being respectful. At one point it's always the same, so... Oh my fucking god. Yeah, fucking pick up what the fuck you want and the radio is on. I'm sorry.
Honestly, one of my favourite things about this Ferrari duo is that when there's a flashpoint, it's always a doozy. Now, I'm not going to pretend I don't have skin in the game here. If you press me to name my favourite current F1 driver, I'm going to say Sainz. But I'm also a big fan of Leclerc. I'm a huge fan of the two as teammates. I think they're well balanced, push each other really bloody hard, and generally work together pretty well based on the trajectory of that team. So as much as I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next year and whether or not Lewis can come out of the blocks on rails, I'm still low-key mourning this pairing that's been slowly plugging away for the last 4 seasons. Never mind the fact that I'm still very much mourning the Daniel and Max partnership, but that's beside the point. Ironically, I'm not a fan of Ferrari, but then with the exception of Brawn in 2009 and my enduring soft spot for Williams and what is now Aston Martin, I tend to be more of a, well, not a hater, but certainly grudging when I find myself rooting for any particular team. This becomes even more frustrating when I find myself grudgingly rooting for Ferrari. And just when I think they're in with a sniff of claiming second in both titles, they shit the bed. Again. Now, in all fairness, Ferrari's strategy and race execution has come on in leaps and bounds since Fred Vasseur took the reins, but this past weekend in Vegas proved they still have the odd catastrophic error in them, and there's the potential for it to have some negative consequences from a teamwork standpoint for those last 2 races of the 2024 season. And that's the shit the bed aspect, not so much how things eventually shook out in Vegas. Now, I'm not saying that Sainz could have pulled out a P2 if the whole pit stop debacle didn't go down like it did. I think Mercedes were always looking like they were going to claim those top 2 spots on the podium. But I am saying that often these tensions we see bubble up between the 2 Ferrari drivers is a product of the occasional messy race strategy rather than anything either of them actually do during a Grand Prix. Beyond, well, Sainz knowing the obvious and that sitting behind his teammate when he's got the prevailing tyre advantage is going to compromise the race for both cars rather than just one, which is, you guessed it, a knock-on from Ferrari making an error from the pit wall. The same thing under different circumstances happened in 2022, and some Leclerc stands still say to this day that Sainz's win was him acting in bad faith rather than a smart strategic choice that gained Ferrari points in the constructors that they wouldn't have got if he'd stayed behind Charles. New softs versus 14-lap-old hards? Come on now, blame the team, don't blame the pilot. So anyway, back to Vegas. Cue Ferrari's mess resulting in Charles Leclerc's expletive-laden radio messages and passive-aggressive comments to the media, and cue another online drama between the Sainz vs Leclerc fans on social media that's still very much rumbling away 2 days after all this went down. I mean, it's exhausting and often filled with truly vile comments, but it's also highly entertaining. And I could go into a full-on analysis here of everything that happened, the pit stop era, how Charles absolutely tore up his Pirellis in the first 3 or 4 laps, and how Sainz's last-minute return to the track was correct to be treated as a track limits violation. But Planet F1 already did that brilliantly. I'll link that down in the description. No, I'm going to talk about a couple of other things that I've seen people griping about all over the place. First, the overtake and the full context. Now, many have made a big deal about the specifics of the radio message discrepancy between Leclerc and Sainz, and that Carlos was told not to pressure Charles, while Charles was initially told Carlos wouldn't overtake. But there's also the small issue of Carlos already being right on Charles' tail and clearly about to make an easy DRS pass when the instruction came through. Even when you consider there's a 6 or 7 second delay between the radio and what you're seeing when watching an onboard, Sainz was already committed to the pass when instructed to not put Charles under pressure, which he didn't. He made a straightforward pass with DRS. Yes, he could have backed out, but why? What would be the point other than to placate his teammate and avoid a few potential bitchy comments? Now, I don't know about you, but if I started ahead of my teammate, managed to go a little bit longer on my tyres in the first stint, and then tried to get out of said teammate's way by asking to come into the pits, only to have an aborted stop 3 laps after I started asking, and still came out right on the gearbox of said teammate who's on cold tyres to the point it would have seriously compromised my lap time while he got them into the right operating window, well, I probably would have taken the easy pass too. I don't think it had much to do with Sainz being relegated to the lower midfield next year, and more a quick thinking decision that ensured Ferrari would come out with the most points possible. Then there's the Max Verstappen DRS situation. There are people out there saying that Sainz deliberately held Verstappen in his DRS to stop Leclerc passing, and that's just the dumbest shit I've heard. And I know not everyone has access to the onboards. I get that. I get that maybe it might have looked like that from the outside if you're viewing from a bad faith anti-Sainz angle. But immediately after passing Verstappen, Sainz was told by his race engineer to shift into tyre management mode. He was also on a recharge after depleting his battery to make the pass. The goal was always to slowly pull away and let Charles do his thing when the opportunity eventually did arise, and there would have been no benefit to Carlos tearing off into the distance and grinding his tyres, all for the sake of Charles getting past a couple of laps earlier and then being at risk in the closing stages thanks to poor tyre management. And a lot has also been made of Ferrari's pre-race strategy meetings and what they agree to prior to the lights going out, but the more that time goes on, the more it becomes clear that they're not good at managing the expectations of their drivers, or perhaps more fittingly, Charles Leclerc, when things don't go as planned. They're too rigid in their goals and planning, and that causes friction between their drivers, particularly when Charles is the one who comes out worse off. And that's not necessarily an indictment on Charles. This isn't the first time he's been publicly bitchy or outright mean like he was after Barcelona, but that's part of him, that's who he is. He's clearly a reactive person who sometimes doesn't know when to shut his mouth, and that's part of what I like about him. That's sometimes part of being a racing driver. You have to be selfish, you have to be outspoken. When it comes to sports, or for that matter, any celebrity, you sometimes have to separate whether or not you find someone entertaining and whether or not you think they come across as a decent person in that small window of time when what we're seeing isn't a carefully curated PR image. Sainz is better at keeping that image consistent. Perfect? No, but better. More calculated and more careful with how he chooses his words. When Charles is being careful about how he chooses his words, he's making sure the whole world knows he's holding his tongue and has some choice thoughts he's dying to get out. The difference is subtle, but one style is measured and thoughtful, the other is passive-aggressive as all hell. But as I've said, and just like I said when talking about the FIA swearing debacle, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's what makes it interesting. Angry radio messages aren't a bad thing. Drivers being messy in the media isn't a bad thing. It gives us something to talk about, something to laugh about, something to get passionate about. Just maybe do it without sending death threats to drivers or other fans, huh? Yep. Formula One, without interpersonal conflict, wouldn't be the same sport we've all been watching for so many years. And speaking of years, I'm trying really hard to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this one, so I'd really love it if you click that subscribe button if you enjoy watching me talk about F1 in the world's second worst accent. I'm on Bluesky now. Follow me over there if that's your thing. The link's in the description. And as always, if you're a regular here, love you guys. You're the best. So what about Qatar then? Will this week's drama llama be glossed over? Will we have a plethora of cutesy TikToks spat out over the course of Thursday and Friday to show it's all fine actually? Or will the tension only get worse as the season comes to a close and Charles tries really hard to chase down that P2 in the Drivers' Championship? Oh, to be a fly on the wall in that race debrief. Because despite the general consensus being that Ferrari isn't going to go well in Qatar, I think that's potentially going to be a bit of a misnomer. Previous 2 times out, we have had 2021, which is a year Ferrari was coming off the back of an embarrassing 6th in the Constructors' Championship, and was the last year of the old regulations. And then 2023, which was a season the Ferrari was absolutely obliterating its tyres in almost every race. But this year, Ferrari has the opposite problem. Trouble firing things up for qualifying while being comfortable in the Grand Prix. Most of the time, at least. And I think they could be a lot more competitive this week than most people seem to assume. And if that's the case, Ferrari needs to get their ass into gear, make sure they're ready to be adaptable, and perhaps tell Charles he might have to suck it up and miss out on that reported P2 Drivers' Championship bonus if that's the right thing for the constructors. You're on like 35 mil a year, mate. How many more yachts do you need? Holy mother of God, it is hot here today.